Hey, this is Christian Roldan.
And Jordan Morris from the Seattle Sounders Football Club.
And you're listening to
This is Nos Odietis. This episode of Nos Odietis is sponsored by Full Pull Wines, a Seattle-based wine retailer and proud sponsor of Nos Odietis since 2011. Full Pull was founded in 2009, is based in Seattle, and is owned and operated by longtime Sounders supporters. They offer the best boutique wines of the world to members of their mailing list, with special focus on their home, the Pacific Northwest.
Here we go. Come on! Hey, O'Shan! Let's go!
A sideline fry! The Seattle Sounders have done it! MLS Cup winners!
Here comes Ray Gibbs through the middle to crown it for Seattle! And now they truly can start the celebrations. It's the Sounders MLS Cup.
Nicola Dero leaves absolutely no doubt! The Sounders rule the region!
Seattle Sounders is going good!
They've scored! They've scored! Finally!
This feels fucking awesome.
This is a tiny dog.
Is that what you young people call twerking?
And Porter says cheated!
We want to win. This is the Seattle Sounders, bro.
Welcome to another edition of Nos Odietis, sponsored by Full Pull Wines, Watson's Counter, and our subscribers. This is episode 428. We're recording on Thursday, August 31st, 2023. I'm your host, Jeremiah Shan. Joining me today is my co-host, Aaron Campo, and of course, our producer, Lickett. It's been far too long since we've recorded after a win. In fact, it's been nearly 2 months since the Sounders last won a game, a streak they finally ended on Wednesday in very satisfying fashion when they beat Austin FC 2-1 on a 90th minute Albert Rusnak goal. In fairness, the Sounders were the beneficiaries of some fortunate VAR decisions, but give them credit for putting themselves in position to take advantage. Both goals they had were well taken, and they did a good job of limiting Austin's chances. I think you can even argue that they had as many good or maybe even better chances than Austin. The Sounders did all this while rotating fully half their outfield players. Dare I say it, but this win felt important? What do you say, Aaron?
Definitely felt important on a lot of levels. We were talking about this, I think, before we started recording. This was, so I got the score spoiled for me, which was a nice surprise, I suppose, but still not a great thing to happen. So I knew that eventually a second goal was coming. If I had not known that, I would have been extremely depressed after Austin scored, because the script for this season has been, the Sounders give up goal and all hell breaks loose. And that didn't happen at all. I thought that they responded really well. They definitely looked like they were getting ready to pack it in, and I think understandably so. But they didn't stop looking for opportunities going forward. They didn't just decide to live with a siege mentality. They kept looking for opportunities, picking their spots, and Albert Rusnak picked his spot, and a great result. And I think, I said to you, given the decisions they made with the lineup, given the decisions they made tactically, because I did think that there was a little bit of some tweaks in this game, I would have been happy with thrilled with even a draw, because they tried something different. They got a result and they looked better. To get a win, I think, is just more than I could have ever hoped for. It was, the perfect outcome. I thought Jordan Morris looked great as the lone striker. And I thought the team just generally looked good and more comfortable and less frantic. And it just seemed like they kind of simplified things. And it was really encouraging. I don't want to get ahead of ourselves. It was, I wasn't thrilled with the way they played against Minnesota. So really, this is, even though it's 4 points from 2 games, it's one game where I've been really, really happy. But if they can build on this, and if they can keep doing the things they did in this game, if this is it gives them the impetus to make bigger lineup changes more permanently, I think it's tough to be happier with an outcome than I am with this one.
I would say that's really the key for me is, what does it mean? What momentum are they able to carry from this? Is this a one-off game? Do they come back and they lay, they look like crap against the Timbers? then this game doesn't matter, right? Like, or maybe it matters to some degree because it gets them that much closer to making the playoffs. But the thing I found encouraging about it was Brian Schmetzer showing a willingness to change, to, try something new at forward, to try some new players, and to not do it in a way that felt as if it was punting. And to some degree, I think this was rotation that was focused on Saturday against the Timbers. But I also think it was an attempt to try something different and just to see what they can do. And I think the proof will be how many of these changes that he made get carried on into the Portland game. If Raul Ruiz-Diaz is back at forward, if Albert Rusnak is back next to João Paulo, if Morris is back out on the wing, I think that you have to question whether or not any lessons were really learned from this game. But taking it for what it was, I thought it was an encouraging performance. It was really good to see some of the young guys step up. It was good to see Albert come off the bench and be effective. It was good to see Ladero be effective. I didn't think bad play in this. Like, there was no one that I was super frustrated with. I thought Leo Chu tired down the stretch. At one point I was yelling at my TV to get him. I actually may even yelled it on Twitter to get him off the field because it just didn't look like he had legs in him to defend anymore. And that was sort of when the Sounders were getting pinned back. Other than that, and there was a few, new who pull your hair out kind of moments, but he mostly made up for that with other plays. I just thought it was a solid performance. I was encouraged. I feel more optimistic now than I've felt, at least since the last win against Vancouver.
Right. And I if I recall, I don't think either one of us felt super optimistic after that one either. So yeah, it was a real breath of fresh air. And I mean, it's not as though Austin is a great team. They're below the playoff line. They've struggled at home even this year, but you beat who you play. Like, I mean, that's all you can do. And this beggars can't be choosers at this point. And the Sounders have been begging lately for wins. And I just think the Sounders were never going to lose out no matter what they did, right? Like, they could have kept playing the same lineup, having the same tactical approach, and they were probably going to win a game at some point. But I think the key is that they won the game, but they looked different in a positive way.
Yeah.
They had a different look about them. They looked more confident. They looked more comfortable. And, you can say that there's an argument that maybe Morris's goal was offside. I'm not going to spend a lot of time worrying about that. You can say there's an argument that, probably a stronger argument, that Austin had a goal not counted that maybe should have. But I don't think you can really argue with the way the game played out. And Sounders looked good. They looked different. They looked comfortable. They didn't collapse after giving up a goal. They kept pressing without exposing themselves. They just looked like a different team. And hopefully that means they can beat Portland at home, which would be really something different, I think.
Yeah. Again, if they beat Portland at home, I think that really changes the completely outlook. It really does. It changes the outlook of the season. I think it starts to make whatever aspirations we have feel a little bit more realistic. And I realize Portland's not a great team either. But the thing is, like, no one in the West is great. St. Louis, on paper, they're getting a lot of results. This is a team the Sounders smashed 3-0. LAFC, I think probably the most talented team in the West, but even they're struggling to string results together. There's just the West feels as wide open as it's really ever felt, at least in recent years. And I don't see why the Sounders can't put together a run, especially if they're willing to change things up a little bit. And I really hope we get to see, like, on the top of my list of things I want to see Josh Atencio get a real run, because I thought he, both Tim Foss and Mark Kastner both wrote about this on Sounder at Heart. they basically said he the Sounders have sort of like fallen into, like the geriatric band that's playing a little bit too long, and they're playing the same hits, but they're just not as sharp as they used to be. And Josh Atencio was sort of this guitar solo that came in and revived everything. And that may be a little bit of a tortured analogy, but I get what they're saying.
They asked me if it was. I said it was good, so you could blame me if you didn't like it.
No, I didn't. Where I was going with it was maybe I don't think if I did it right.
Yeah,
but yeah, I mean, I think it feels like a fair, like, this is not a broken team. It's a team that wasn't fitting together, and I think maybe, just maybe, moving some pieces around and swapping in a couple might be what it needs.
Yeah, completely agree. I mean, I think it's different ideas. I think that teams can get in ruts when stuff's not working, and having players that are not pressing, who are trying to make the most of their opportunity, can work wonders. And I think it was encouraging that Nico seemed willing to take a different approach to the game and sort of play, like you said, play within himself. And Jordan scoring, even if it's not necessarily a goal that you don't think Raul ever could have scored, or was distinctly a Jordan Morris kind of goal where he just kind of outruns everybody, it was nice to see a striker score a goal. Like, it's been a while since we've seen that. And
yeah, it's been a long time. I think it was May 7th or something like that was the last time the Sounders got I guess May 7th was the last time Jordan scored for the Sounders. But whenever the Charlotte game was, it was a span of like 10 games since any forward had scored for the Sounders.
Yeah, and that's rough. It's very difficult to win games if your forwards aren't scoring goals. So
yes,
unless you're like
Man City, I guess, but they have a forward that scores a few goals.
Right. Just a few. So yeah, I mean, it's one game, and it's not like all of the problems were solved and they went out and ran riot over Austin.
No.
But like you said, like, the West is pretty tight, pretty wide open. This is not the best Sounders team we've ever seen. This is not a team that I think, even if they can get everything kind of figured out, that I think is nailed on to make a deep playoff run. But they're not a bad team either, if they can make use of the talent that they have. And I think too that if there are players like Raul Ruidiaz, who I don't think is done, right? Like, I think he still can be a good player, but I think he is at a point in his career where he's not capable of just fully pulling himself out of a rut through sheer force of will, like he maybe used to be able to do. But if the pressure is not on him as much, and he can have, some games where he's coming in late, where he's not expected to start, not expected to score, that pressure doesn't continue to mount. Maybe that's the thing that he needs to do to get back in a better headspace where he can be a really solid contributor again. And it's a lot easier to give him the space to do that when he's not sitting on the bench saying, well, they're not doing anything either, right? Like, when you're getting results with the guys that are on the field, it's hard for the guys that are on the bench to say, well, I could do better, because they hadn't been. So yeah, hopefully, that gives everyone the ammunition they need to keep making the right decisions for the team, and to, just try some different stuff, because it was really nice to see something different in that game.
It was really nice to see something different in that game. And, I think I would be a little insincere if I didn't mention that the Sounders lost the XG battle 1.8 to 1, which I think is almost exactly the mirror image of what the XG was the first time they played Austin, where they won the XG battle. And I don't know, I think this is one of those ones where it's maybe a little like XG is a little deceiving, because the Sounders created chances. They had Leo Chu's chance where he hit it off the post. If he squares that ball to Jordan Morris, it's a tap-in. Jordan had a shot where he put it through Brad Stuver's legs. It just so happened to deflect slightly off the inside of his leg, and it goes just wide. they were getting looks in the game, and and these were, that's what you want to see. You want to see them moving up the field, getting it out in transition, doing things that we just haven't seen the Sounders doing that much in the last 2 months, the last 4 months, really. And it was all positive to see. That was good to see, and I think the players really do have an appreciation for, they have not fixed anything. This is the step. These are positive steps. And I think in that context, the Minnesota result was probably a good lead into this one, because I thought they did enough well against Minnesota to, like, I thought they deserved that point. I think one of the things that we've seen consistently in these two games is that one of the things that I think happens to the Sounders when they are struggling is they're just not connecting passes. To lead, like, they aren't able to, I guess, what's it called? Rest defense. Is that what it's called? Rest defense. How are they? There was a term that Mark, I remember using one time about active defend. Is that what active defending?
Passive defending?
Maybe it's passive defending, where it's basically you're just defending by holding the ball.
Yeah.
And they haven't been able to do that very well. And I thought one of the things that was most encouraging about the Austin game, and what I think we also saw in the Minnesota game, was when it got down to crunch time, they weren't panicking.
Right.
They drew fouls where they needed to draw fouls. They got ball, they put balls out of bounds where they got throw-ins. They could milk the clock. And I felt like for a 10-minute stoppage time that they had against Austin, there was very few moments of real nerves, despite them playing with the lead that whole time, and Austin presumably just throwing everything they could. And Austin didn't really generate any chances during that stretch, and I thought that was super encouraging.
Yeah, I mean, I think that this is, like you said, one of those games where it's almost the mirror image of all those games. The Sounders won the XG battle, right? Where,
right?
Yeah, of course you were creating chances. You were playing at home and you were losing the game,
right?
And I thought the Sounders did really well. I think I'm not trying to dunk on anyone, because I'm not going to sit here and say that Stephen Fry did not have some rough games earlier in the season, but I definitely feel vindicated in feeling like he was still a very good goalkeeper. And I think this game was a great example of that. I thought he played exceptionally well. And
Minnesota, I thought he was really good against Minnesota too.
He's been really good most of the season. It's just almost, again, not trying to dunk on anybody, because it was reasonable at the time to have concerns, but it is kind of crazy to think that was earlier in the season. Like, a big debate is it time to make a change at goalkeeper? And I think really he's more than solidified his spot. I thought he was great.
So much so that I think not only do I want him to come back, I think that's the right decision to bring him back. I don't think you're going to go out and assume you can find a better goalkeeper at a similar price than what you're getting Stephen Fry for.
Yeah.
And so, and I think these last few games have really, one of the last two games have really solidified that in my mind, that this is not a player who is past it, who's still got the shot stopping ability that you need from him. Maybe his distribution could be a little bit better, but I thought in the last couple of games his distribution was pretty good.
Yeah.
And it helps when you're kicking the ball to Jordan Morris instead of Raul Ruidiaz up top.
Yeah, it absolutely does.
Just cold hard facts there, right?
Yeah. And I think too, you mentioned that the Sounders were connecting passes and able to hold on to the ball in a way they hadn't been. And I think specifically for Nico, that was the thing that has been standing out for me for months with him, is that he was misplaying so many seemingly very simple passes.
Yeah.
And that just wasn't a thing he did in this game. I mean, it was maybe the biggest difference between Nico in this game and Nico over the last few months, is that I'm sure that there were passes he didn't connect on, because that's just kind of the nature of his position. But I don't remember any that sort of, brought this frustrated reaction out of me that had become pretty common with him over the last however many games, where it's like, that's a simple pass and I don't understand how you did that poorly with it. He didn't have any of those. He didn't have giveaways in bad spots, which have been an issue for him. He just looked so much more comfortable and in control. And I think that he's so vital to when he's on the field. He's going to dictate so many things about how the Sounders are playing, and if he's struggling to connect passes, it's going to put so much pressure on everyone else. And so I think it's really critical if he is going to be playing that he's not making those errors, because it can really have a cascading effect. And in this game, it sort of was the opposite, where the midfield wasn't under pressure because they weren't having to deal with bad giveaways and things like that in the middle third.
And he was also hanging out mostly in the middle third. He wasn't roaming all over the field, which is another thing that you really want to see from Nico. And if he wants to shade to the left, he can shade to the left, but like, don't go too crazy. But anyway, that's probably a good place to take a break. We're going to come back, talk a little bit more about the Portland game coming up. And you're listening to Nos Arietes. Watson's Counter wants to thank everyone for their patience, but now the wait is over. Located at 6420 24th Avenue Northwest in Ballard, they've reopened in a brand new location with the same bomb-ass coffee and the same dumbass vibes. You can still expect their classics like the gochujang fried chicken sandwich and Fruity Pebbles French toast, alongside their new soft serve program and their world-class coffee. Make sure to follow them on Instagram for all the latest and greatest. Welcome back to Nos Arietes. So, big game on Saturday. Big game.
Very big game.
I for two teams that aren't necessarily looking super hot. Well, no, I shouldn't. Yeah. Overall, neither team is looking super hot. But I don't know. This feels like a must win. There's nothing about it that technically is a must win, I suppose, other than if the Sounders want to win the Cascadia Cup, they need to win their 2 home games against the Timbers and Whitecaps.
Yeah.
But they have to figure out a way to beat Portland at home.
Yeah. It's interesting that I feel so much better about this game because Gio is gone.
Well, he has absolutely had the Sounders number.
Yeah,
no way around it.
There was the one major ass kicking down in Portland, the 6-2 game, and that's
the last time the Sounders beat Portland, by the way.
Yeah, and that's been pretty much it. And so I do feel, and they don't have a new manager yet, and won't before this game, so they shouldn't get the new coach bounce, which will be nice. I mean, Portland stinks. They're really bad. They are as bad as the Sounders were at their absolute worst and have been for most of the year. They're below the playoff line, which is extremely difficult to do this season. They're just the team that pretty much everyone in the league should expect to beat at home, except maybe Colorado, or pre-Messi Inter Miami. And because they have so consistently embarrassed the Sounders at home, and because that loss in Portland is the thing that really feels like there was the one up here last year, and that sort of derailed some building momentum in that season. And then there was the one down there that sort of really was when the wheels came off on this season for the Sounders. And it would just feel, if you're a believer in vibes and the importance of vibes, and the Mariners are increasingly making me a believer in vibes and their importance to sports teams, I really think you got to win this game, because it really does feel like it has the potential to just turn the vibes around completely.
Yeah, and not to jinx things, but I'm looking at Portland's schedule. They have not won consecutive games, not all year. They have not won two. They don't have a single winning streak this year, and they beat RSL in the previous game. They have not. They haven't won the XG battle for 6 straight games. They got blown out by Houston 5-0. That's the game that got Gio Savarese fired. They followed that up by losing 3-2 at home to the Whitecaps. They did redeem themselves a little bit by beating RSL 2-1 on Wednesday. But this is not a good team. They have not been a good team. They weren't a good team when the Sounders played them last time, of course.
No.
Or the time before that. That hasn't necessarily changed things for the Sounders. But this is just, they got to do it.
Yeah.
Nothing about this says like Portland's not going to lay over and just like let the Sounders beat them. But the Sounders need to they need to absolutely score first in this one. They need to score second. They need to make this thing. They need to put this to bed.
Yeah. We normally say that, like, in a game like this, in a rivalry like this, it's a cliche, but it's a cliche for a good reason, that the records don't matter and you got to throw that out the window. And that's certainly proven to be the case.
Yeah.
Throughout the history of this rivalry, especially over the last, 5 years or so. But you can't have it. The circumstances of this game mean that that stuff can not matter. What matters is that Portland is really bad. They've won one game on the road this year, and that was in April. And the Sounders are better. And if they want people to take them seriously and they want people to feel like, yeah, this is a team that is capable of actually turning this thing around, you got to beat this team. And frankly, you got to beat them pretty handily.
Bizarrely, the one game they won on the road was against
St. Louis,
leading St. Louis.
It's very funny. St. Louis is a weird team. They're a weird team. They're a fun to watch team, but they're a weird team.
And they actually outplayed St. Louis in that game too.
Yeah.
Like it wasn't like they got lucky. That was a long time ago.
Yeah. They've had a lot of injuries. They're not in this position in a vacuum. Like there are a lot of reasons. But
and I will say that was also during the one stretch of this season where they looked pretty good. They actually won 3 of 6 and they were 3-2-1 during those 6 games. And that was also which a streak that was started when they beat the Sounders.
Yeah.
4-1 in a massive come from behind victory that really started to derail the Sounders season. So it would be kind of fitting if the Sounders could sort of like put a nice bookend on that, beat the Timbers, and then ride that momentum into the postseason.
It would be. And I think if they win this game, obviously there's still a lot of season left. I think the fears of the Sounders missing out on the playoffs have to evaporate if the Sounders win this game. It would take a lot.
They would almost have to go. They would almost have to go winless if they win this game. They'll be on 43 points. I would imagine 45 points is probably going to get you into the playoffs.
Yeah. Even now it would be difficult, but for them to miss the playoffs, considering A, how many teams make the playoffs, and B, how bad.
And it's also how many teams would have.
Right.
It's not just that the Sounders don't have like a insurmountable cushion in terms of the gap between them and 10th place. But there's a lot of teams between them and 10th place. That's really the trick, is that there's the scenario isn't just that they drop all these points. It's that they drop all these points to these specific teams are the ones that are, picking them up. It's a lot. And it's a lot of them that all have to be doing it. Yeah. But let's not worry about that. Let's get this win. I guess what are the big things you want to see from this aside from the result? Like what are the signs that you would be encouraged by? Like what's the lineup you want to see?
I'd like to see a lineup similar to what we saw against Austin, and I mean maybe not man for man. I think Leo Chu looked pretty ragged at the end of that game, so that's maybe tough for him to get another start.
But who do you put in his place? So, like, would you want to see Jordan on the left there?
I really want to see Jordan up top. I think there's a chance we see Albert. I suppose there's a chance we see Raul. I'd rather not. I really want to see what Jordan can do up top. And that does complicate things, especially with if Leo can't start again. I mean, I don't know. I don't know who you start there. But I really want to see Jordan up top. That's the key thing. I would be happy to see Raul get some minutes in this game. And I think it's unlikely that Jordan is going to be able to go 90 after starting midweek, putting in what looked like a pretty exhausting shift. I think maybe you can play Nico on the left. Maybe you can give that another try. I don't know, but I think the biggest thing for me is who doesn't start. And I love Raul. I think he still has it in him to be a good player this year, to be, a guy that is starting come playoff time. I think he needs to start this one on the bench, at least this one more on the bench.
Yeah.
I want to see the Sounders come out aggressively without getting punched in the mouth, which has been the thing that has kind of screwed them against Portland, I think, in this run of poor results against them, is that you can come out aggressively and play like the home team and go after it without being overly confident or naive. And I think that's kind of the thing that's done the Sounders in against them, is that Portland is a team that, can counterattack. They pretty much always have been. And the Sounders have gotten eaten alive on the counterattack because they've just been a little too aggressive. But at the same time, you're playing at home, you're playing against a bad team. It's a game you have to win. So you can't come out too timid either. It's a tough needle to thread, no question. But I think you have to be able to do that if you're a team that people want to take seriously. And yeah, I think the biggest thing is just don't give up stupid goals. Don't fall apart if Portland does happen to get a goal, because that's happened a lot. The pressure of this game has pretty clearly gotten to the Sounders, at times over the last couple of years.
So bizarre.
It really is. It's very uncharacteristic, and it's uncharacteristic of this specific group of players.
Right. That's what I mean. That this is a group of players that's won a lot of big games, that's played in a lot of big games, and yet something about playing Portland, especially at home, brings out some of the worst tendencies in this group. I'll tell you, the group I want to see, I think I've settled on this. I think I wouldn't mind seeing this for an extended period. Morris up top. I'm okay with seeing. I think Leo. My suspicion is that he can start again. I just think he was. It was hot. There was a lot of reasons that he.
That would certainly be my preference, right? Like if you can go, I'm thrilled.
And I suspect that he can. On the right, I think I want to see Rusnak. I realize that's not his preferred position, but I think with the way that the Sounders play, the way that Sounders use that spot, I don't see any reason he can't be successful there. I want to see Ladero back in the middle. He earned that right. He played that well. And then I think in the central midfield, I want to see João Paulo, Josh Atencio. I'd be, I think bring Alex Roldan back on the right back, and then the other normal ones there, Yamar, Jackson, and Nuhu, and Fry. That's not a crazy amount of change, but I think that's the lineup. Like if that's the lineup you use going forward, that's your A lineup. I have no problem with that. At this point, I'm not expecting Christian Roldan to I'm not counting on him for anything this year at this point. If he does, I hope that's a good sign. At this point, my feeling on Rui Diaz is he needs to play his way back into the starting team. That means he's got to find a way to score off the bench. He's got to do it. Maybe there's some spot starts that he gets, but I don't think at this point it's not his starting spot anymore. And roll with this and see if you can get that going. I do think that there's some. I think it's fair to say that there's open competition at right back. I think Reed Baker Whiting has shown that he is at least capable of challenging Alex Roldan. I still think it's Roldan's spot. Similarly, on the left, I think Cody Baker has shown some signs that he can challenge Nuhu, but he hasn't played enough recently to warrant a start in this one. And frankly, I think it's fine to be a little conservative with the lineup outside of the two changes that I said.
I think that the fact that there's just that little bit of pressure on some players who have not really had a lot of pressure is a really positive thing. And that doesn't mean that they've become intentionally complacent or lazy or anything like that. It just means that subconsciously, that if you don't perform, you're going to lose your job. And that can bring out the best in people. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, and I think that the Sounders have some decent options off the bench. If you can bring Rui Diaz off the bench, great. That's a great option off the bench. If you can bring a Paul Rothrock, who all you need to do is bring energy, cause some chaos, that's great. Bring Reed Baker Whiting off the bench if you want to get a little more aggressive at right back. These are Obed Vargas as an option off the bench, another solid option.
Yeah.
I think this is Like, I'm not going to sit here and say the Sounders are MLS Cup favorites or anything, but I can absolutely talk myself into thinking this is a team that is capable of something if they play the parts right. It's also a team that's capable of completely falling apart. I don't think they're going to miss the playoffs, but it's not outside. Like, these 2 games have not suddenly convinced me that they are like a great team. I don't want to overstate that, but I guess what I'm saying is they showed me enough that I'm now kind of convinced that at the very least, I want to see what this altered group can do.
Yeah, I think that's the key thing, right? Is that there's all of a sudden we know that Brian is willing to make changes. We know the players can respond to those changes. We know that they're capable of putting in a good performance. It was, I think, reasonable to worry, oh, this is just going to be the way it's going to be this season.
Because that's what it had been. Exactly.
Yeah. And it's the way it was most of last season too. But all of a sudden it's not. And it just that little like bit of promise that, hey, like, it doesn't have to be the way it's been. This team can still be good. They can still get results. That's all I need to keep me invested, is just give me something different. If it works,
give me something to hope for.
Yeah. Give me a reason to watch.
Right.
Winning games is the best possible reason to watch as far as I'm concerned. So, so I have my cynicism level has been cut in half, if not more. And a great time to do that is before the Portland game.
Yeah, exactly. It's funny. I had sort of talked myself into the belief that they could lose this game against Austin and I would still feel, I don't know, something like I really do feel like this week comes down, like the success of this week. I suppose on paper, if they tie Portland, it's still a 5-point week. That's still positive. But if you want to change the way that the fans feel about this team, it's not a math problem. Yeah. It's something different than math. It's give me reason for hope, and beating Portland would be that reason for hope. But they got to go out and do it.
Yeah.
They got to go out and do it.
And if they don't do it, not only is all the whatever goodwill or whatever hope there was from this past week erased, it's maybe worse.
Right. Because this was sort of like the potential turning point. And I don't know, like you're telling me you can't beat Portland at home and you're going to do something, you're going to go on a run. I'm skeptical.
Yeah.
More skeptical than I was, before like before anything else. So
absolutely.
It would be nice. It would be very nice if this week ends up being a positive, turning point. Yeah. So let's end it there. Thank you to our sponsors, Full Pool Wines and Watson's Counter. Thank you. A massive, massive, massive thank you to all the people that have signed up to become subscribers of Sounder at Heart. We are really doing well on that front. I don't want to keep banging this drum, but it's true. Like, it's not a fully sustainable project yet. We're in great shape. We're going to get through like this first year. I have no doubt about that. But if, like, to make this a really sustainable long-term project, it's going to take a little bit. We need to keep growing this thing. And I appreciate everyone who's signed up. I really appreciate it. I hope we continue to give you a sense that you're getting value out of this. I'm not trying to make it sound like this is a charity, but I've been really proud of some of the work that we've done just in the last couple of weeks. I think we've put out a lot of good stuff on this channel, and the people that have been helping out with this thing have been a massive, massive help. This, like, the whole Sounder at Heart team, the whole Ride of the Valkyries team, Aaron Lickett, the Nos Audietis folks, which I guess I'm part of as well. This has been a really invigorating thing. I hope people are excited by it. I do think it's pretty awesome to be able to, like, put our stake in the ground as a independent media company. And I hope people are taking some pride in that as well. And it's worth being excited about. And I'm hopeful that we can ride some of that energy. We can build on this energy with, like, results from the Sounders. So anyway, all that said, I'm Jeremiah Shan, signing off for Aaron Campbell and Lickett. This is Nos Audietis. Remember, you will never get alone.
We love you. Let's win another one.